In this video, I will definitely try my best to rationally cover shed testing versus proving out when it comes to ball python breeding. There's a lot going on as to how people feel about this, and so I'm gonna do a video which I hope that I can rationally discuss the benefits of shed testing for today's breeder. Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Paul with Spheric Reptiles, and I thank you so much for tuning in to this video on shed testing versus proving out what modern breeders must know. So I'm saying what modern breeders must know because just to preface this whole video and why I'm doing it is we purchased an animal that's for our breeding project. I mean, it's a big animal for our breeding project, and we bought the animal as a black pastel, red stripe, Enchi, yellow belly leopard that was head for clown, which is just great. That's genes all over the place. We got a really great price from a really great breeder, and the breeder is just really good. We bought multiple animals from him. And when we shed tested it, the animal proved out to be black pastel, red stripe, Enchi, fire, head clown, and head genetic stripe. I just wanted to let that sink in. So that additional gene for fire and that additional recessive gene for genetic stripe just made that animal worth so much more to our breeding project, because I was already looking on how I could add something other than yellow belly, something other than leopard, because we got a lot of it in our collection, to our breeding project. And I was also considering purchasing a head genetic stripe so that I could start adding that gene in as well, so that we could reach some of our goals a little bit faster. But with that one test, we were able to get we went from saving years to just months. That was the acceleration that we got overnight when we got those shed test results in from RGI. I did contact the breeder who sold me, and unfortunately he had sold all of the hatchlings, right? And there was not any of them left over. So, you know, this just goes to show from a breeder perspective and a buyer perspective on how things can change. And for us, it was so drastic that I wanted to put out this video on what modern breeders can do to help themselves out. Let me preface all of this. In 2021, or a little bit before, around the COVID time, the thought process was, if you build it or if you make it, it will sell. And not only would it sell, but it would sell for such an exorbitant price, right? So a lot of people got in and they spent their money instead of time, right? So there was no shed test at this time. So you basically had to go on the promise of a breeder for all of everything, whether there were recessive traits, what the incomplete dominant traits were. I mean, it was just really hit and miss. But the biggest thing is you never got a chance to catch up or move forward with your projects until after 2 or 3 years. Remember, everything's based on the females, getting that female up to size and then breeding her and then proving her out, right? So you took the word of the breeder, because there is no replacement for experience. Now, in 2026, fast forward, now modern breeders, it's like J.G. Wentworth. I always say that it's my money and I want it now. So, and that's on everything. Like, we use a microwave. So if you don't use a microwave, none of this is going to make sense, right? I think everybody uses a microwave. But anyway, so just getting into it. So in 2025, 2026, genetic testing hit the market really strong. And what we saw was a rapid rise in ball pythons hitting the market. But the difference was now it's harder to find multiple genes at one time. You find specialized genes now because of this. So the ball python breeding hobby has expanded. A lot of people got out because they didn't get their money back from their COVID investments. So they were a little disgruntled, I feel. I mean, it's just my personal opinion. But the ones who stuck it out, they see how they can use genetic testing to move their ball python projects forward. But the biggest thing is this: now you get what you pay for. So don't tell me, show me. So that's the theme now moving forward with ball python breeders, because remember, there's over 8,000 different morph combinations that you can get, and it's improving and increasing every day. So there's plenty of room for people to create things that they've never seen before, or different combinations, because if you do your morph market search, what you'll find is that there just aren't a lot of different varieties. And once you get into those recessive traits, it's only 1 or 2 pages at best for incomplete dominant genes added to those recessive traits. So in 2026, moving forward, modern breeders, you can use the genetic testing versus waiting. So I think that's a little bit better than not. I don't know. You guys let me know. So shared testing didn't create the market. It just improved it, right? So it made it possible for people to actually spend their money and get what they want. So in all other facets of life, you spend your money and you get exactly what you want, or you can get a refund, right? Now, when it comes to these incomplete dominant traits that you're investing in, whether it's at the pet level or the breeder level, it's just great to be able to get what you want because all the other costs of life have went up. So it's kind of like you're pinching pennies a little bit more than what you probably were maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago, especially when you're at home collecting checks. But, you know, this is the key for shared testing, and this is why it's vital. What I'll use to prove that it's vital is I'll use two different pillars. So I got two different pathways. The first, this is where I think shared testing has the greatest amount of use, especially for a new breeder or an existing breeder, or even someone that's just considering getting into breeding, is if you breed a head to a head, what do you get? Well, you get, if you don't get the visual, 66% of the animals or 2/3 of the animals that remain will be het. Now, if you breed a het to a normal, now it's 50-50. So it's a toss of a coin as to whether you get a het for that recessive trait that you're looking for. Now, with incomplete dominance, you might not even be able to see all these traits, but at least when it comes to those recessive traits, which people are paying a little bit more money for than they are the incomplete dominant traits, you can test these 66% or 50%, and you can either do that from the breeder end or you can do it from the buyer end, and you can know what you get without investing that time, right? People don't really have time to spend. I think that's our most valuable asset. So if you just really consider the availability of shared testing just to prove that out so that you know what you're working with before, whether you want, if you're a breeder, if you want that to be in your collection or not, then that's going to be key for you moving forward. Now, the second is if you look at the screen, there's an ivory up there. So if you have any white snakes or any supers, then it's going to be very hard for you to identify those genes without a genetic shared test. Or again, you can raise up that animal and prove it out whether it's a male or a female. So you're looking at a year to a year and a half or 2 to 3 years before you can even prove that out. Like this animal that's on the screen, there's no way. All I knew was she was ivory, maybe spot nose, and head clown because I knew the dad was a clown. It just so happened that both of the parents ended up being yellow belly. I mean, that's the only way you get an ivory. You don't get an ivory from one animal. So when I genetic shed tested this animal, she actually proved to be phantom, spot nose, ivory, head clown. So I knew that the phantom was in there, but there was no way for me to identify that with the super form of yellow belly. So those are the two pillars in which I think provide just immediate ways for you to get some feedback from your shed test instead of waiting 2 or 3 years. And I mean, everything always related to the time, right? Because we never know how much time that we have. Like I say, enjoy that time you spend with your reptiles and cherish that time you have with your family. I say that for a reason because time is so fleeting that anything that you can do to catch up on saving some time, as if we can, then I think you should do it. And when it comes to shed testing, rationally, I think that that's a very good benefit for, like I said, new breeders or even existing breeders. Let's talk about the best case scenario because I think, you know, what I said before, that has great meaning, but the best case scenario would be, so in this example, when we had the animal that was black pastel, red stripe, Enchi, fire, double head for clown, and genetic stripe, is that addition of the genetic stripe adds more diversity to our end goal for animals. So inadvertently, it makes you rethink, and I'm not saying that anybody should be static. Always have your plans, you know, ready to change because nothing in life is exact. It's always changing. So having that gene, the genetic stripe, plus the fire will allow us to make our animals look different, whether it's in the TSK project, whether it's in the clown project, because now all of a sudden, even in the clown, we have a chance to make some Pompeii kikis, like within 2 or 3 years. And I think that's phenomenal based on the fact that we just had one animal and we just shared tested it. So we got a lot more bang for our buck over that single gene recessive. Now it's a double gene recessive het animal. So, you know, that's something that fell into our lap. And so that's one of the benefits of just testing your animals, especially when you're sold an animal that has a lot of genes. Now, the fire, of course, that brightens things up. But since we already have a lot of yellow belly and we have a lot of leopard, both of these things will work out well. Even the genetic stripe with the leopard in the cases where we breed that together is going to play out well for us in the future. Now, what is the worst case scenario? A worst case scenario of shed testing was that you get negative results, right? Nobody wants to spend money and then be told that, hey, you didn't win the lottery, right? But it happens all the time. You buy a lottery ticket or a scratch-off ticket, or you go to the casino or you bet on something and you don't win. Well, the house always wins most of the time, but in shed testing, it's not the case. The best thing about the worst case scenario is that you get to see what you don't have. So as a breeder, if I see that we have an animal, if I breed a head to a head and I genetic test them and they come out that they're not het for that recessive trait, then I have the choice to sell that animal and make it available to someone at a very lower price, like at a lower price, low enough to where it will fall deeply into that pet category. Now, if it's part of our breeding project, then I can choose to hold it back, or because I have the confirmation of the genetic share results, then I can do it. Now, let me talk about why this is important, right? Because I think a lot of people have some kind of a problem with people saying that they're breeding ball pythons to sell, right? People do a lot of things. When you go to work to make money. But in particular at Spheric Reptiles, what I want to do is I want to provide healthy animals, healthy first and foremost, but I want to give people what they pay for. So even in choosing to breed animals to sell to other people, I hope to be fulfilling the needs of the customers, because the customers deserve to get what they pay for, which in this case from us would be a healthy animal that, if I'm not sure 100%, has been shed tested. So that's the way it's going to be moving forward. And I have a feeling that a lot of breeders are going to be using this as a tool moving forward to instill more buyer confidence. So that's saying a lot, but there's still more. So let me get into the disadvantages that are perceived about shed testing, right? So first is the accuracy. Some people question the accuracy of shed testing. PCR, polymerase chain reactions. Some people doubt the science. Now, I have a degree in science. I work in a scientific field. That's all I've ever worked in was scientific field since I got out of school. And that's been over 25, 26 years now. Man, this time went by so fast. Freak. I didn't want to curse, but so if we look at accuracy, so everything's measured in a p-value or confidence interval. Confidence interval means is that some of the shed tests are only 70 to 75% confidence, right? And others are around 95% confidence. So with each one of those, there is some risk of error in the testing, but the more tests that these companies get, so we're looking at shedtesting.com and Rare Genetics Incorporated, the more tests that they get, the more they're able to refine their actual shed tests. So that, if you had to compare what I can show you objectively versus what someone can tell you subjectively, which one would you rather trust if you're spending your money? That's all I got to say. And that to me is a rationale for using a shed test. Me, I'm much more willing to trust numbers and scientific results than I am someone's opinion. At least I know that the people that are doing these shed tests, they're investing a lot of science and a lot of numbers, meaning money, into giving people what they pay for, because they run the risk, if shed tests don't come out to be accurate, of losing it all overnight. And then where would we be? So the next thing would be the amount of money that you spend. So yes, it does cost money, but at the most, a full panel shed test is around $140 for a whole animal. So you either can spend that $140 for that full panel shed test, or for the single test, I think it's around $35 to $40, or you can raise up this animal and feed it for 2 to 3 years and spend an average of about $340 to $400, right? So to me, the most valuable thing, again, is time. So it's not the fact that you spent $340 or $390 to raise up a beautiful animal, because none of this has to do with what you feel about the animal or the shed test of the animal. It's just basically, how much time do you want to save if this is your goal, right? So if your goal is to produce animals that look a certain way, then I feel like the $140 initial upfront cost within the first month or two of you having this animal is worth way more than the spending of the time and the money after 2 or 3 years. The last thing would be market damage on this, right? So market damage. I know for sure, because I've been in a reptile, I just haven't been breeding ball pythons. You know, I've had a lot of different reptiles. I've had Nile monitors, Savannah monitors, reticulated pythons. I don't know why I would say reticulated. Reticulated pythons, Burmese pythons, yellow anacondas, boa constrictors, corn snakes, ball pythons, king snakes, and then I went herping a lot, especially when I was in school at UT San Antonio. All breeders breed for pattern morphs. So no matter if you're a boa breeder, if you're a crested gecko breeder, ball python breeder, reticulated python breeder, Burmese python breeder, it doesn't matter. You're breeding for morphs unless you get locale specific. But it can damage the market. Shed testing has made the playing field equal, right? And I said, I'm going to be honest about everything because remember, this is for you and this is a how-to video or a reasoning video, but it definitely can destroy the market because now instead of people having to wait, now you get people that are saying that, hey, I can get these couple of combinations and now you have, say with puzzle. Now you see a lot of puzzles out there, puzzle ball pythons, and pretty soon you'll see a lot of monsoon ball pythons because the shed tests are available. So now people can actually buy those animals and they can breed them after they raise them up at a lower price. And anyone that doesn't test positive, then they can sell, right? Or they can keep the ones that test het for monsoon or het for puzzle. And if it comes out to be a visual, then you know what they're going to do. It can do that. But the one thing that I can say for the market is the shed testing does not make bad breeders. If you're a bad breeder, you're just a bad breeder. What it does is it uncovers the errors in record keeping for these animals. So now with shed testing, I'm not saying that you don't have to keep good records, but if you do, it is only enhanced when you have the shed test. So what I mean is if you have the sheds when they happen, the feeding schedule, when it was born, how much it weighs every month, or even the ovulations over time, with the shed test, just think about that. You're giving that customer a more complete data package for what they're paying for. They're getting more for their money. And who doesn't want more for their money? All right, so I talked about a lot, guys. I don't know. It's still up to you as to whether you get a shed test or not. I really buy into the shed testing because I want to keep our collection small. I don't want to produce holdbacks that run to a dead end. And then likewise, it's always good to get results for something that you're working towards, right? And whether it's good or bad or best case or worst case in a scenario, I really feel like shed testing is valuable to any new breeder, existing breeder, or someone just considering breeding ball pythons, right? There's a lot of things you can do, but I feel like this is a good investment for you. But definitely, I want you guys to let me know as well. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you want to subscribe, subscribe. But more importantly, you know, I just want you guys to be successful in what you're doing because this not only costs time, it also costs money. And you need to enjoy all of it, right? And I think that the shed testing helps you just to enjoy it a little bit more. It's just like a little bit, it's a present when you get it. Whether it's a good present or a bad present, it's still a present. Coal is still a gift. I'm just kidding. But anyway, guys, hey, I'm going to let you go. I hope you guys enjoy the time to spend with your reptiles. You see, I got some animals still haven't whooped in. This one just won't settle down. And definitely cherish that family, like I said before, because time is our most valuable asset that we have to share with our families. Thank you.